Hello, and welcome to Profound Growth Brain Reset. And today's topic is how our values inform how we co-parent, or in my case, grandparent. So I'm here with the fabulous Pari. She is, amongst many other things, the VP of Human Resources and the parent of two boys and the co-parent of the two boys and two girls. So parenting with four children of various ages. So welcome, Pari. I really appreciate your insight and wisdom onto this, with this fabulous topic of how values can help us co-parent, parent, grandparent better. And, we were talking early on about we're looking at this through the lens of parenting, but quite honestly, whether you're managing a team, running a business, values, clarification, and alignment is a very useful tool for anybody at any stage of life. And so I want to quickly have a look at a couple of research, brain research, as well as psychology researches about values and why they are important. So what we know from neuroscience is that when we can look at values, it activates the default mode network in the brain. And without going into huge details about what that is, just one thing: the default mode network gets activated when we look at meaning and purpose. And it's really the network that helps us be self-reflective. And so in regards to other science, it helps relieve stress and anxiety when we, number one, can be self-reflected, but when we can also reflect on values, because it gives us this ethical and moral compass by which we can live. And once we figured out what is really important in our lives, what really has great meaning to us, we can align our actions then with that value. And research proves that that really helps us be less stressed. And in one of the articles, it said it also creates distance from social pressures, which I just thought that is just fascinating, because it is September 2020. We're in the middle still of COVID, racial upheaval, talk about social pressures on multiple levels. So, having said all that, so what are some of the interesting pressures and discomforts in co-parenting?
Oh my goodness.
Well, where to begin?
Where to begin? Well, I suppose to start at the beginning, or the beginning of the end, right? You're typically co-parenting in the sense that I am, right? Where I'm in a second marriage. My children's father is still, to his credit, involved as an active parent. My husband's ex-wife is involved as an active parent, and we've all come to this situation because there was serious conflict previously, right? And so something that you've helped me work through and helped me see differently is maybe the stories that we're bringing to every situation that involves that ex, in our case, ex-spouses, right? And I know there's many different co-parenting arrangements, and you've mentioned grandparenting as well, right? As a dynamic. So I think taking a hard look at maybe the values that were amplified during those situations, or where I feel triggered at times, has been really useful. And I echo what you're saying just through experience of, when you're looking at just the conflict of values as compared to conflict with a person.
Yes.
The ways that you can see that, and then establishing new values, or reestablishing or reframing values as a family unit is another thing, a journey that we're on, right? And kind of discovering all the time. But the pressures are real for everyone who's trying to influence or shape the life of a child right now to try to guide
Yeah.
and instill values and be an example of living values. I mean, you hit on the key. They're seeing, for many parents who have the privilege to work at home, my kids see way more of how I show up in every part of my life right now.
Because you can't at 8 o'clock, you can't say, okay, see you later,
Yeah,
and you don't see them for 8 hours,
right.
right?
There's nowhere to hide. Right?
Before you have your coffee, right? Before you have your own like caffeine brain reset, they really see you. That's a really, really, really good point. And then showing up on a consistent basis. That's an interesting point you're making, like the consistency. I think this is something else that values help us do, to lead a more consistent life. It's not sort of flip-flopping between, oh, today I'm this person and tomorrow I'm that, depending how stressed or I am or how well I've slept. It's like they're really sort of what I would call the North Star, that we kind of can keep our eye on and go, in this situation and in that situation, it doesn't matter. This is the value I hold. And so what kind of values are important to you?
Yeah, so one for me personally, that I know we worked with quite a bit is independence. So it's important to me to be able to stand on my own, if you will, to instill that sense of empowerment in all of the children, right? That they are capable, they are intelligent, and they can do, if they want to, they can do it on their own.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's the value of independence. And so how does that inform what you do with them and how you do it?
Yeah. So, well, there's the positive and the negative, right?
Well, that's really good. That's a good point to bring up in values, but go to the positive first, and then we'll unpack, the downside.
Sure. So for me, it's important that all of so the ages are, we have two 10-year-olds, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So a little bit of a span, right? But within their kind of age appropriate realm, that they know how to do household chores. Right? Is something that I think is empowering to them, and also gives them a sense of like, hey, I can figure this out. I can do this, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so I think that's one positive way, helping them learn to manage money, right?
Yes.
Through their allowance that they earn with the chores, etc. So I think all of that fits into helping them see what they're capable of. And they, no surprise to anyone who's involved with children, they often surprise me with what they're capable of.
Oh, absolutely. I can really see this. This is an interesting point, as it relates to the value of independence. So if you are co-parenting with someone, and I'm not saying this is the case in your case, but if you are co-parenting or grandparenting for that matter, or aunting, uncling, leading, I mean, team, same thing. And you as an HR professional, I'm sure this resonates. So when you then work or live or parent with someone that doesn't have that value of independence, what happens then?
It's so interesting, because an equally wonderful value or approach would be nurturing,
Mm,
right? And
great value. Great
yes, it's a
value to
great
have.
value. And then, so being in conflict with someone who wants to, oh, sweetie, let me do that for you. Let me help you with that, right? I can take care of that for you. Or even, oh, that's not the right way. Let me just do it for you, right?
Yes.
We've all done that.
Yeah.
And we show love in that way, right?
Yes.
And that can create conflict, right?
Yes.
If you have one individual in any of the circle
Yeah.
that's, oh no, sweetie, let me handle that for you because I love you.
Yeah.
Just a different view of, I trust you to do it yourself because I love you. right?
Yes, like really good point. I mean, we all show love in different ways. Many, I think, of our values, both the effective use of values and the ineffective use of values, I think we're often instilled from our own growing up times, our own childhood. And I think sometimes, I learned values from my parents and said, I want to do this as well because I really honor and love these values. And then they had values that I thought, I'm never going to do it like that
Yeah.
because that just doesn't work for me. And in regards to the independence value, I see this in grandparenting. When the 5-year-old and the 3-year-old climb around on the climber and the monkey bars, I go to let me hold you, let me help you. And then when I go with the parents to the monkey bars, and the parents are just sitting there having coffee and talking to each other, and the 3-year-old and 5-year-old, they're like upside down and all over the place, and I'm like going like. And then when I have them on my own again, I go, okay, I need to tweak my nurturing, independent safety. I'm in charge of you and I'm in charge of your safety. That's a huge value I have. I don't want them to get broken when I'm in charge of them. But then it helps me tweak that value and go, okay, I need to stand back a little bit and let them have that adventure, and maybe also a little bit that on being on the edge. And instead of saying, being there and holding them, is saying, do you need help? Can I help you with that?
Oh, yes.
And so I have learned to, just by observation, to align myself more with what I need to do. It's been a long time since I've raised the 3-year-old, right? And it feels like it's a different century. So it's like observing values in other people, I think, also helps us modify what we need to do and how we need to do it.
And you just really hit on something that resonated for me, which is like, what better way to empower and show respect than to check in with them about what they want.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great conversation. So what are the pressures that especially maybe co-parenting brings as it relates to values?
Yeah.
You think about, you have your 2 boys who sort of grew up with you and your values. I think they have brain wiring already. This is how we do it here. This is how we do it in this house. That's neuroplasticity. That's neural pathways that these boys have had since they were little. But now you have the girls that have different neural pathways, right?
Yes.
They grew up with, this is how we do it over here. And so then you're trying to put this together. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Some days I can't imagine either. Yeah, so I think for our family, it's been important, and I think many families of this era, right, are going through this, that we never want the children to feel the tension that should stay between parents.
Mm.
And so some of the pressure that I feel is, how do my husband and I take them forward and role model and show them the values that we hold important as the foundation of this family unit, without creating tension or conflict or a sense of lesser than or unworthiness with the other set of parents.
Yeah. And
Right.
you're bringing up a really good point, I think, in values clarification that, of course, in coaching, we do, like, it's the foundation of coaching is how you start. It's like, trying to figure out what is the value that the client holds, and in teaching this as well, we always say there is no such thing as a bad or a good value. It's just a unique expression of you in that value. Values are moral, ethical, North Star points of what we consider important, how we want to do life. And there is no, independence isn't better or worse than nurturing.
Right.
Being timely, and being on time and keeping your eye on time, having that as a value, isn't better or worse than wanting to be flexible.
Right.
It's just a different expression of how we express our value. Now, earlier on, you said something about, there is sort of an upside and a downside. There's an effective and an ineffective way of values. So I want to come back to that. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I think so. When I was speaking specifically about the independence piece, something I personally noticed when I'm too attached to that value and that I can then pass on, right, is maybe a lack of connection or a lack of community when there should be. Do you have to do everything yourself? No, right? And should you have people who can help you when you need help? Yes, right? So I think, forcing an idea of independence, or so in the most basic parenting way, asking a child to do more than they really can do.
Mm-hmm.
And leaving them alone, the point isn't to abandon them, it's to empower them, right? And there are many cases where I realized, to your earlier point as well, about not all of these 4 kids have grown up with the same expectations.
Yes.
So they're through no difference in their actual capability, which limits they've tested and in which situations are completely different.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that's when it can become negative, is, trying to like force a value or jam something into a situation that really doesn't call for.
Yes. Yeah.
You can even erode it, maybe. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not capable, I can't do this.
Yeah, especially if they don't have any neuroplasticity around independence. This is a new field. It's a new journey. So, I think that I often talk about over calibration. When we over calibrate a value, in our training, we call it maple tree value, because the maple tree has a very, very, very strong root system. And it often, when you try and plant something under a maple tree, it's actually not going to grow, because it's got a very, very dense canopy, a very strong root system. So you're trying plant something else underneath, it's going to die. And so sometimes we get so have such a strong desire to honor this value that is so important to us, that we forget that we have other values that sort of contribute and nurture and modify and soften maybe this maple tree value. So, your value of connection and love and nurturing can modify and soften independence. So I think that it's really important, I think, to look at values as the bucket, and not insist that we need to honor this value. And this is the most important one, but looking at all of them and bringing them together and go, well, this value can support this value, and this value, when we put them together, will help create a more flexible value, as you will.
Mm-hmm. Even as you're talking, you spoke earlier about the calming effect. I'm like, yeah, nothing stands alone. Like, even now I feel calmer, right? Because it's like giving you more tools to choose from.
Yes.
And that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah. And I think having a conversation with kids and the parents that you co-parent with, if that's at all possible, about all the values and how they can all fit together and contribute, as you said so beautifully, to the whole, rather than just focusing on one that seems to be the most important one, in this scenario. So The other interesting thing about both the articles that I was sort of reading this morning in regards to values, there were, and makes total sense for me as a coach. When you're clear about your values, then your actions can also then be aligned with that. And so your life doesn't feel like it's sort of chopped up in bits and pieces. You line your values up and then you choose, as you said, you can then choose, is this action going to align with the value? Is it going to reinforce it? Is it going to take it away? Is it moving closer? Is it taking me away? So I think, some of the sort of notions of, oh, I'm such a procrastinator and I can't get anything done, I think is really just related to values and the actions we take. Because when these two pieces fit together, taking action is really easy. I mean, when I look at the actions I take, if they're aligned with the values I hold, I'm off to the races. If they're not aligned, I either don't do them at all or they're a struggle.
Yes. And so what you just said for me, what was playing in my mind was COVID parenting or co-parenting, but the entire, I have individuals on my team and in our organization who become frozen, right?
Yes.
And just the overwhelm of, trying to keep work going, trying to give whatever the right amount of time is to supervising their children or schooling their children or just being a parent or guardian. And there's more and more to do and less action happening.
Yeah. That's a really good point, this place of being frozen, because then the choices get so overwhelming that the brain has really hard time to look at step by step and looking at what is important now. And it's a lot easier even in COVID. And I think the interesting thing about values is in COVID, we might have to take a really close look at what is important to us. Like if you have a value of productivity, and you're homeschooling all of a sudden and you have 4 kids at home, you might need to look at this value and still hold it as productivity. It's just the way it looks like will look different. You can still be productive, but it might not be that you're cranking out, 15 different human resources policies that are all brand new. It might be that you deal with one HR issue, but productivity also means that you got the homework supervised for 4 kids, that you took the dog out and the dog is still alive and fed, and that you actually still are sane. Right? So it's really, during COVID, I've asked all my clients, just revisit your values. You can hold them and honor them. It's just the way it looks like. We need to revisit that. It's a different lens. And so staying flexible through the lens through which you're looking at it, might be valuable depending on the value that you have, right?
Yes, absolutely. And, it goes back to what you were saying about the actions. I think even, just taking those moments to be in touch with how what you're doing either supports or doesn't, your values, your bucket, right? The whole bucket, and feeling the ability to let go of the things that don't fit in the bucket.
Yeah. At least not today.
Yeah.
This is the other thing, people look at values and it's like, okay, today, these are my values, and today is a day for all of them, is looking at the bigger picture and going, maybe this week productivity really went down, to the bottom of my values list, but connection rose, or ease or self-care rose. And so it's not a static solid list of here are my top 5 and boom. They need to be held, I think, softly.
Yeah, absolutely. And recognizing that um, you know, that there's no betrayal of values if you're changing them, right? That there's alignment to be found there as well. I think that's a beautiful point.
Yeah, yeah, especially when we find ourselves in extraordinary times. So, well, thank you so much. We could talk about values for another 3 hours. We'd never run out of we would never run out of anything. So thank you so much, Pari. Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked this recording, please like it. If you have any comments, let me know. You can reach me at Ursula at Profound Growth. And if you think this is valuable, pass it on to other people, whether they're parenting, co-parenting, leading a team, grandparenting. Values, fit into life. So thanks, Pari, very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.